Tier lists. We all know about them and they can theoretically be about anything, even about ranking every shade of your favorite color. The point is, everyone has made at least one tier list in their life. Except me, which will change starting today. If you're somehow unfamiliar with my channel, I play Left 4 Dead 2 custom campaigns and post my completions on this channel, and I complete, let's say, a lot of them. 252 custom campaigns to be exact. Now, because I am a sane human being, I won't be ranking them all in a single video, as that will destroy my sanity as well as my PC storage, and I never intend to make 20-hour long videos. Now, before going into the tier list, I will be setting in some rules to help you understand why I gave a certain campaign that rank. Number 1. Only advanced and expert difficulty will be taken into consideration when ranking a campaign's difficulty, as I have the most experience in both, although I lean more towards expert difficulty. Number 2. Both human players and bots are taken into consideration, because not everyone has a human player at their disposal when playing Left 4 Dead 2. And number 3. Gameplay will be prioritized over aesthetics. This one is self-explanatory. It doesn't matter how visually appealing a campaign can be. If it plays horribly, its placement on the list will get dragged down in the result. With all that said, let's kickstart this tier list with my, and probably everyone else's, first ever custom campaign. That's right, Coldstream. This custom campaign was so good, Valve decided to put it into the official campaign selection screen. But does it still hold up in the big 2025? In my opinion, I don't think so. If I were to compare this campaign to the others under the same category, then you would notice some differences. Mainly that this campaign doesn't have the same vibe as the Valve campaigns. Another difference is that this campaign is way more unbalanced. Like there aren't that many supplies, zombies spawn pretty much constantly without any breaks, and there are guaranteed tank spawns, with one of them bringing insta-killing hazard. The main problem I have with this campaign is Chapter 2 and Chapter 4's crescendo event. Chapter 2's event is way more difficult than the parts leading up to it, and the game just tells you it's gonna be hard by the fact it gives you guaranteed laser sights near the explosive barrels, alongside some extra stuff in the tent. Then there is the event itself, pretty much zombies jumping you until you reach the end of the chapter, which is easier said than done. Also keep in mind that there are strong currents which can mess up your movement before entering the door on the right, and even if you make it to the door, there is a big chance you will get ambushed by a special infected the moment you set your sights on what's beyond the door. If you survive the drainage carnage, then there will be a claustrophobic section before you reach the end of the chapter, which will likely end up in a restart. So the best piece of advice I can give is don't just brute force this event. I mean, good if you picked up that chainsaw in the truck. The bad news is that that was only the second hardest part of the campaign. Now imagine everything I just said about Chapter 2's event, but it's for the entire chapter. That's how I would sum up the final chapter of Coldstream. Just endless hordes of zombies with some special infected here and there, and to make matters worse, a guaranteed tank spawn halfway through the chapter. Great. Okay, look, I made it very clear that I don't like this campaign, and I'm more confused about why Valve decided to list this as an official campaign, because it doesn't follow up with what happened in the parish. But I guess I won't know what the 2011 standard for campaigns were. I'm sorry, Coldstream, but even your decent scenery can save you from my final judgment. You're just simply a mess. What a way to kickstart this tier list. Then this would be everyone's second custom campaign completion. This campaign was added in the last major update for Left 4 Dead 2, but unlike Coldstream, I actually enjoy playing on this campaign. It feels very polished from start to finish while not being too difficult, so you're not constantly banging your head against a wall when you've got to redo that one hard part for the 194th time. One thing that stands out for me are some of the cinematics, like waiting for the crane, visiting the plane crash site after seeing it fly over, and the rescue boat shooting a flare to know that it's arrived. But unfortunately, Every campaign has its flaws. I know events are designed to be hard, but holy, every time I gotta restart these generators for the crane, I feel overwhelmed whenever I play through this segment. And then there's the elephant in the room, the lighthouse finale. This might be, if not, my favorite finale in the game, but let's be honest, nothing beats Dark Carnival's concert finale. When you first play this campaign, you might think that this is just your standard holdout finale with 2 horde segments with a tank in between them. But this campaign switches it up by replacing the final tank encounter with a scavenge part. Just to be crystal clear here, I don't like scavenge finales, as hoarding gas cans is both very time consuming and frustrating, and I also have a bad habit of accidentally shooting gas cans, which just makes me want to commit vehicular manslaughter. Bad habits aside, after completing the scavenge part, the finale is not over, as the tank that was normally replaced by sad scavenge still spawns, and then you gotta go through another horde segment. Alright, the horde's dealt with, now we just gotta... God damn it. As if fighting one tank and the scavenge weren't already hard enough, now you gotta fight 2 tanks. Also, for a little hint, make sure you fight the tanks while going uphill, so the rocks they throw become useless, so they smack into the ground. And if you're going downhill, then just shoot them out of the sky before they can reach you. And now you can finally escape after surviving all that madness. Like I said in the beginning, this is a very solid campaign, but I'm kinda sad that this campaign only has 2 maps, so you could call this a boredom buster if you don't fail 7 times at the Lighthouse finale though. Gameplay wise, it's almost perfect. The scenery feels repetitive, but most Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns suffer from that problem in my opinion, and that makes it an above average campaign. Alright, now with those quote-unquote fake custom campaigns, now we're finally on to the real ones, and this one's a classic. In short, the authors of this campaign restored every single scrap bit from Dark Carnival and added some new areas, mechanics and secrets while retaining enough of the familiar design so it doesn't feel like you're playing a different campaign. One thing you will notice immediately is how much bigger the chapters feel compared to the original, and I'm a huge fan of exploring huge areas, and with those huge areas comes more supplies to help you on your journey through the fairgrounds. Sometimes my head actually hurts when I play this, because the first chapter is pretty much flipped. Instead of going left on the highway, you go to the right, and you go through the motel pretty much backwards, if that makes any sense to you. The whole carnival has also mostly been redone. Everything looks different, but the path you have to take to advance forward feels familiar enough if you played through the original. Even the small events like the carousel have been changed. I gotta admit, the authors have eye for detail, even for the smallest ones. They even made the water in the Tunnel of Love functional, where in the original Dark Carnival it's just still water. Chapter 3 feels like they mashed Chapter 3 and 4 from the original together. Speaking about the coaster, they even changed that event, so now you gotta go through it backwards, and you start where you normally end. And now my head hurts again. Jokes aside, the authors went out of their way and added an entirely new chapter that features the Ferris wheel that you would normally see in the distance in the original campaign. They even made an event out of it. And let's just say, it functions almost the same as the original Dark Carnival Stadium event. Even this event becomes almost free if you have a bile bomb at your disposal. And then there's the finale. It's bigger, more challenging, and what's this? A scavenge event before reaching the main stage? It feels like I gotta redo my entire rant about my hatred towards scavenge events, but I won't. Luckily, this one isn't all that difficult because you only need 4 gas cans and are relatively close to the generator, so no big deal. What is a big deal, however, is the main stage. The Dark Carnival finale is my all-time favorite finale, so what could possibly go wrong? And I changed this one too. Fantastic. Instead of your regular holdout finale, You gotta do chores while infinite hordes are coming to skin you alive. Although one thing I noticed is that special infected spawns have been toned down a bunch, so there's a plus. The things you gotta do during this event can vary from setting off fireworks, turning on spotlights, and there's even a goddamn scavenge section! But that can easily be nullified with a bile bomb, so I was screaming over nothing. And keep in mind that there's still a tank that spawns halfway through the finale, but the map is so open and big that it's barely an issue. And after standing near the microphone for long enough, the chopper pilot spots the gang, you open a gate and then you escape. Motherfuck. Yeah, I almost forgot about the second tank spawn, and you have to kill this one while regular zombies also roam the scene in order to escape. Alright, the tank's dead, we take off, and the story is what I would say if there weren't 5 million coins scattered around the campaign. But I never found them, and the only thing that you get when collecting them all is a cutscene that shows how the survivors end up at the start of Swamp Fever. Really cool Easter egg if you ask me. Now with all of that said, this is easily one of the best official campaign remakes out there, and so it deserves its spot in the awesome tier. Okay, we're suddenly in Japan now. I got bored of the United States anyway. This campaign portraits the stereotypical Japanese scenery, starting from the dense neo-city aesthetics to the great outdoors with amazing natural environments. Personally, I prefer rural campaigns over city campaigns because frankly, they all look the same. Not to say that the singular chapter that centers around the city is bad, it just feels like navigating through a giant maze while going through endless back alleys and random buildings without that much guidance of the infamous graffiti arrows. Moving on from Tokyo's red light district, the gang find themselves in the region of Kyoto and decide to make a stop at Kiyomizu Temple, all while passing through some small populated areas. And I will say it again, I am a huge fan of this kind of scenery and I'm actually lost for words. On a small side note, I highly recommend using the katana as your melee weapon for that maximum amount of immersion. After passing the temple, you make your way to a cable car station, but then the cable car stops halfway through and you gotta repair it. No big deal, although the requirement for fixing it is strange. It's a holdout event, but instead of pressing the trigger once, you have to hold it, which means you are defenseless and you gotta rely on your teammates to protect you. So I'd imagine this section would be hard if you have incompetent teammates. The issue I have right now with this campaign is that it takes place in the night. And it's raining. But luckily no sudden thunderstorms occur. Oh look, it's day now. Looks like this campaign already redeemed itself. After the calm cable car ride, we get to continue our lovely afternoon stroll when you suddenly come across an overgrown village of some sort, which makes you really feel like you're in a zombie apocalypse as everything is broken, corroded and abandoned. And not only that, you also have to go through a set of eerie mines to reach the final chapter of this campaign. The finale takes place on an abandoned hotel, and it's a scavenge finale. Why does everything besides Coldstream so far have a scavenge spot? And the worst part is that the hotel feels like a maze on your first attempt, so I'd suggest fully exploring the place before hitting the switch to start the scavenging nightmare. Also keep in mind that you cannot open a single door for some reason. This also occurred in the overgrown village, but it isn't an issue because you can just jump through the windows to progress. Back to the hotel, you would think that you could prematurely collect every can and place it at the generator before starting the finale. Well, that idea gets thrown out of the window pretty fast as the rooms where the gas cans are located are blocked by invisible walls. So you do have to do the scavenge finale without any cheese. Remember when I said that you need to remember the path you took the way to reach the roof of the hotel? I hope you did it because the rescue chopper doesn't land on the roof but instead back at the entrance of the hotel. So you gotta make your way back down all while endless hordes are chasing you. And that's Yama for you. I hate to repeat myself, but I really love the natural setting this campaign has to offer, especially in chapter 4, which is also why it's my favorite chapter of the campaign. Easily an awesome campaign. Although Dark Carnival Remix is the best remake of my favorite official campaign, I prefer Yama's rural gameplay over Dark Carnival Remix's urban environment. And we're already back in the States, specifically in San Francisco. To start things off, I think this is one of the better city/urban campaigns, because the author based some of the areas on real locations in San Francisco. Some examples are the Palace of Fine Arts, Fort Point, Alcatraz Island, and who could forget the iconic Golden Gate Bridge. But before you get to the bridge, you need to cross downtown San Francisco, and it's quite a fun experience. And I have to admit, I really like the custom car models used in the campaign, as it gives that extra touch of realism, as well as custom survivor dialogue. What I mean with this is that the survivors talk about their surroundings instead of being dead silent for the entire campaign. So there's another plus for Daybreak.
That's a righteous ride down that hill. Anybody want to go up and do that again?
Breaking my neck is not a fun time, Ellis.
It's not funny. You could really hurt you.
Grabbing me assault rifle.
It is funny.
After surviving the somewhat difficult Fort Point panic event, you finally get onto the legendary Golden Gate Bridge. In fact, the bridge is so big it spans over 2 different chapters, with a safe room stop in a stranded cruise ship named Francis?
No, I'm Francis. Okay, man.
And it gets even more exciting because the cruise ship has an actual interior with different rooms, which contain extra supplies inside, instead of just rushing to the captain's bridge for a checkpoint. After you leave the bridge, it's straight to the prison complex of Alcatraz for the final escape, as a different rescue chopper leaves the moment we descend from the bridge. And what is the finale, you may ask? Well, it's another scavenge finale. What the fuck, man? But this one is somewhat interesting because not every gas can is directly available, because you need to open each row of prison doors to access the cans that are beyond locked jail cells. But all the rest is still your standard scavenge finale. I also just noticed how every chapter ends at a landmark. Chapter 1 ends at the Palace of Fine Arts, Chapter 2 ends in Fort Point, but Chapter 3's checkpoint is in the middle of the bridge, and finally Chapter 4 ends inside the boat you take to Alcatraz Island. And that's everything that needed to be said about Daybreak. Or is it? You see, there is a secret in every chapter in the campaign, and it involves a gnome you find somewhere in the middle of Chapter 1. If you don't want any spoilers, I suggest skipping ahead, but you have been warned. Now, what does the gnome have to do with these secrets? Well, the gnome can open the red doors in every chapter that hold a hidden room crowded with extra gnomes, some supplies, laser sights, and a weird looking canister of pills. But be careful with them. I'm not gonna show it in here, but upon consumption you become quote unquote high, and all kinds of weird stuff happens, like color shifting vision, low gravity for some reason, high pitched speech, and worst of all, copyrighted music starts playing, so streamers beware. The first door is in the first chapter, right before you enter the park on the right side of the road. The second door is in the second chapter, where you drop down in a small holdout spot. As far as I know, the third chapter doesn't have a secret door. In the fourth chapter, it's not a normal door, but a red garage door, and this is where the main event takes place. You enter this portal and then get sent to the gnome's father, and then you can retrieve a campaign exclusive weapon, the flamethrower. Personally, I don't think it's that good, because the range of it is rather short and the flames take up half of your vision when using it. But it can save you from forgetting a Molotov when a tank appears, because it still applies the full burn effect. More about the event: instead of delivering the gnome, you can just leave, and it becomes a difficult holdout event. At least, it should be difficult, but the affected seem to get stuck on the flight of stairs. But hey, I'm not complaining if it makes my life easier. And finally, the last door is in a small side passage before you go upstairs to the prison. And this one has the most amount of loot. Yes, even more than the one in the castle. The guy in there probably knows how hard the finale must be. And now I have said everything there has to be said. No, I'm kidding. There's a hidden downside with this campaign. if you're a person like me and use a lot of add-ons, this campaign just doesn't function and basically .exe crashes every time you start a new chapter, or it sometimes just refuses to load a chapter. So I suggest playing this game with a minimal amount of mods, but besides that, this is one of, if not the best city campaign, so it's safe to say that this is one of my personal favorites and just pure perfection of itself. How do we keep ending up in these locations? Just like Daybreak, this campaign is based off the real abandoned city of Chernobyl, and if you like that small overgrown village part in Yama, then you will also love this campaign. And just like the real deal, radiation is present and is indicated by, well, this sound, whatever it's called. I think it's called a Geiger counter. These radiated locations aren't that common, but it's nice to see that addition of realism. What I really like is that you see how nature just takes over abandoned places, and the added corrosion just increases the feeling of wanting to know what happened down here. You also go through some interesting locations, like a swimming pool, several school buildings, a close representation to the real Jupiter factory, and whatever the hell this is supposed to be. At some point you also have to solve a puzzle in order to proceed, but it's rather confusing and the optional objective of finding the nodes becomes necessary to just open the door. The finale is also unique in some way, where instead of all the loot being close to each other in one spot, they are scattered all over the map in crates and there isn't a rescue vehicle. Instead you have to go inside a fallout bunker of some sort, and that's the end. In the end screen there's a hint about chapter 2, but it's been 7 years since chapter 1 came out and I haven't heard anything about it since. So don't get your hopes up for a sequel in the near future. One downside of this campaign is that it feels very repetitive because everything looks the same. But don't get me wrong, I really like this type of scenery like I mentioned in Yama's section, but the tall grass often obstructs vision, which makes it hard to spot certain infected like jockeys and crawling hunters. This campaign also has the shared issue like Daybreak, where it just straight up crashes or refuses to load when too many mods are installed. So ultimately I toned down the amount of add-ons I had installed, and I even ended up playing on an optimized version just to get this background footage. I know this section isn't all that long because, like I said, almost everything looks the same, so I don't have that much to talk about. With all that said, this is just an above average campaign. The idea was ambitious, but I think the execution could have been better in my opinion. If you were to ask me what the best time is to visit Disneyland, then I would answer with during a zombie apocalypse. Why? First of all, no laughably expensive entry fee, and secondly,
No lies!
just when I thought recreations of real places couldn't get more precise, then this is the pinnacle of it all. The authors really did their research and tried to remake this amusement park in a co-op zombie shooter game. And yes, this campaign features fully functional rides, but more on that later. Just like every other theme park visit, you start at Main Street and slowly make your way to the main attraction while passing through other fun places. In this case, Walt Disney's apartment, which has a hidden mechanism that makes a random tier 2, tier 3 weapon or chainsaw appear in case of zombie apocalypse. How ironic. Comical even. Chapter 2 isn't all that special because you mainly go through backstage areas and some queues. Also keep this particular area in mind, as it will be very important in the very far future. The real fun starts in chapter 3, where you get to enter the haunted house, which functions like the real thing. Well, only the elevator part before the actual ride does function. The actual dark ride cards are stationary. After you escape the mansion, the main attraction and center point of the campaign is in sight, Splash Mountain. And it is excited as it sounds. A fully functional log flume inside of Left 4 Dead 2, and it even features the music it plays on the ride itself, but I'm not gonna play it here because it is copyrighted. However, as fun as it is to sit in a plastic log, some of the gates have to be opened manually and the wheel to open them are missing, so you are sent on a small side quest to retrieve a spare wheel. twice. And naturally, the second wheel is harder to retrieve than the first one, because the second wheel is behind an emergency door, while the first wheel was just sitting in a backstage area. Also a little tip, if you want to be extra immersive with the whole ride, turn off your flashlight, and then it suddenly feels like you're watching some of those on-ride POV videos. Well, that was fun, now was it? What is less fun, however, is the dreaded finale, which of course is a scavenge finale. But with a twist. Instead of gathering 4 trillion gas cans, you need to fill them up by siphoning fuel from the nearby vehicles. And you need to do that twice, as the first can is free. So the strategy you could use to beat this is to siphon the furthest vehicles first, which makes filling the second can easier. Also, the first tank spawns way earlier for some reason. And after you're done with passing gas, the last Disney helicopter is there to save you. This is definitely an awesome campaign, but the first 2 chapters aren't all that interesting compared to the rest the campaign has to offer, but I will still be placing it at the top of awesome. Unlike the previous 3 campaigns, this one isn't really based off a real location, as Fort Harris County doesn't exist in real life, as far as I know. At first this would look like any generic city campaign, but this is anything but generic. The authors really made this campaign unique by adding locations you wouldn't expect to come across, like a bowling alley, movie theater, and the giant football stadium being the center point of the campaign. But before you reach the stadium, you have to do a lot of zombie killing, all while the authors have added some extra elements to make this experience unlike any other city campaign. Like this one part where you have to shoot a gas can to burn a rope, which then makes the boat come over so you can safely pass the bridge. Well, I guess that wasn't all that good of an idea. Also, is it just me, or does this campaign contain more explosions than the average custom campaign? It almost feels like Michael Bay was involved in the creation process. I mean, it makes sense, since they are planning to bomb the entire place. As mentioned by the guy on the radio before you enter the stadium. What I'm about to say may not be 100% true, but the last safe room of the campaign feels way bigger than any other safe room I've ever been in. And did I mention that there's also a secret present in this campaign? That's right, the gnome makes another appearance as a secret. But where do you find him? Instead of entering the elevator in the first chapter, you instead go straight ahead and find the chap alongside some other loot, and if you bring it all the way to the final safe room, there's a hidden room where a somewhat familiar robotic voice makes itself present, and then, after depositing the gnome, you can take part in a regular Aperture Science test program. This might be the most amount of effort put into a single secret, but it's worth the time and the tests aren't all that difficult. If you're an intelligent player, that is. I don't know why, but I seem to really struggle with these for some reason, especially in the room with the oxygen tanks. But in the end, you get rewarded with heals in case you didn't have any, and now you are set for the stadium finale. I forgot to mention this, but this campaign also has a custom melee weapon in the form of a foam finger, which you can find near the entrance and on the upper levels of the stadium. I really like custom melees, but this one only available in the last chapter, so what's the point? The finale isn't all that difficult until you reach the field, where you need to face off against 2 tanks, but the area is so big that you could theoretically split up and have 2 survivors fight 1 tank each. And if you don't have a Molotov, you can try igniting the tank with the fire that's in the middle of the field, but only do so if you have the guts for it. And after that, it's a quick sprint to the rescue helicopter and that's game. For those wondering where Suicide Blitz 1 is, the 2 indicates that this is ported to Left 4 Dead 2 as the original was made in Left 4 Dead 1. And you will see that this happens quite often with custom campaigns. And for my final judgment, this is one of my personal favorites, but Daybreak has a special place in my heart, so I will place it below Daybreak. Which isn't a bad thing, it takes a lot for a campaign to qualify for this tier, so bravo for the current and future campaigns who will be placed in my personal Hall of Fame. Ah yes, the Bloody Moors, home of one of the best soundtracks ever made for a custom campaign. So shout out to the composer because he did a fantastic job. More about the campaign itself, this is the pinnacle of rural campaigns as everything takes place in the outdoors of Yorkshire, which is in the United Kingdom. After surviving a plane crash through some sort of miracle, you take a stroll through the wilderness while collecting supplies for the upcoming journey, even coming across a custom melee weapon. And then you arrive at the first highlight of the campaign, which is the house from the intro poster. It features an acceptable amount of loot, a small conversation with the residents, which of course has to spawn a horde. And if you like that scripted horde event, beyond the broken door is a guaranteed tank spawn. So the best thing you could do is open the door, throw a Molotov inside, and then hope you're confident enough to fight a tank in a close quarters environment. The next landmark is the river, which everyone would just walk through in their first time playing. But it turns out you can just walk next to it and be rewarded with loot near some infrastructure and then follow the APC panic event, which isn't all that bad, but it's instantly followed up by another event, which is the acid house party, where you need to turn off the radio to finally bring a halt to the hordes. Also, calling it a house is an understatement, as it clearly takes place in an apartment complex. Next up on the list is the cemetery, but before you get there you need to walk down this road, which features not one, but two guaranteed tank spawns. Why two? I don't know. I guess one wasn't already difficult enough. And then an immediate problem arises as you empty on ammo and still need to traverse quite some distance to the next ammo pile. Oh, and there's also this small interaction with the telephone cells which warns you about the situation in the cemetery.
Hello? Can you hear me? I can see you on the CCTV camera. Listen, please, I need your help. I'm in the building beyond the cemetery. I can hear some kind of wolves outside, but it sounds much bigger than that. The front of the building is securely barricaded, but not the back. God, they've heard me.
It better happens to him than to us, I would say. But the trouble doesn't end there, because we need to feed Trevor, otherwise he won't stop attracting zombies due to his constant barking. This event isn't all that bad, but this is made more time consuming as you need to go all the way to the back of the barn just to enter it. Side quest completed. Oh, and make that 3 guaranteed tank spawns. Something tells me that there are gonna be more of those later. I almost forgot to mention that the bones near Trevor are also melee weapons. When you enter the house, you can confirm that whatever the phone guy said was true, as there's a dead tank lying on the ground alongside several dead bodies. Alright, what's next? Oh right, the caves. This is probably the most boring part of the campaign, mostly because it's repetitive and dragged out and ammo management is necessary in this chapter, but the ammo isn't all that common down here. Although I like big and open areas, everything looks the same, so I couldn't bother. Also, right before the end of the chapter is an event with, you guessed it, 2 more guaranteed tank spawns. But you do get that much needed supplies before heading into the battle. But once you jump down, you can't go back up, which adds extra difficulty because 90% of the time your ammo supply is dried up and you still need to go a bit further. Whatever you do, make sure you have at least 1 bullet left amongst the entire group, otherwise you will get soft locked as there's a set of gas cans you need to shoot in order to reach the safe room. And if that wasn't difficult enough, there's even a small horde that spawns after the explosion. So don't choke that last section because it takes at least 10 to 15 minutes to get back there. And then there's the finale. Luckily this takes place during sunrise because this is a hard one. Upon arriving in the small town, some chap calls you a stupid foreigner and then instructs you to fetch him some supplies in return for a chance of escaping, aka stealing his boat. But is it really called stealing if he literally gives us the keys? It doesn't matter. What does matter is how you're gonna get the supplies, as there will be constant hordes until you escape with the boat. And for all time's sake, let's throw in a guaranteed tank spawn, because why not? Except this is the worst one yet, as it spawns on the path you need to take to get to the boat. There's also this weird thing where the tank spawns on you if you take too long to get on the boat. Luckily the water doesn't insta-kill you if you fall in it, but you do take tick damage. Normally I would also complain about the campaign taking place during the night, but this time it would be less interesting because the campaign is built around a creeping setting, and having it play out during the day would ruin the entire concept. At least the finale is set during sunrise, so I can't complain about not being able to see anything. And besides, the path you are supposed to take is well indicated by various light sources like campfires, flares and the graffiti arrows in some of the indoors areas. As for the ranking, this is another personal favorite of mine, because the atmosphere and music just takes it away and the gameplay isn't anything to scoff at. I like campaigns that offer a challenge, although I could see the guaranteed tank spawns being an issue on expert difficulty, but if you know about them, then you can play around it.
I hate mountains.
No pun intended. This custom campaign is made by experienced modders, so my expectations were high and naturally they delivered. This is another high quality rural campaign, but sadly the first chapter isn't all that long, so it feels like this campaign only has 4 instead of 5. But before you reach the safe zone, you can see the first point of attention, which is a huge manor with enough loot to kill every zombie in the forest 4 times over. But with this large building comes the downside of getting easily lost, so you better remember the way back. When you reach the top, you can call in the escape vehicle. On the upside, if you don't remember the initial path you took to get up, there are numerous shortcuts you can take to eventually get back to ground level. And there's a chopper with a guaranteed tank spawn. I'm sensing a theme here among difficult campaigns. This tank fight isn't that hard, however. Just dodge the trunky punches upon spawning in and you'll be fine. Alright, I guess I'm not escaping on chapter 2. Better go somewhere else. The catacomb section, if you can call it that, isn't all that exciting because it all looks the same, but once you get out of there it becomes more interesting as the caves feel very natural. The small train section feels awkward as it's very cramped and you can get easily jumped by special infected like chargers, jockeys and especially hunters, because their dark appearance blends in with the dark environment. I'm gonna group chapters 3 and 4 together as they're practically the same, except chapter 3 has a split path which alters with each attempt. If that didn't make sense, one attempt you could go left and if restart, the path on the right will be opened. This also occurs in chapter 1, but I avoided talking about it because it rarely happens. And chapter 4 has this giant lumber mill with a holdout event that involves smashing a container into a building in order to get to the safe room. The scenery of chapter 3 and 4 continues in chapter 5 and you eventually end up in an outpost of some sort where the last holdout takes place. And one hell of a holdout it is. Remember when I said I like difficult campaigns? Well, this finale is no different. Not only does one tank show up in between the hordes, but 2 do. Not once, but both times, which ramps up the difficulty by a shit ton. The way I like to beat it is I let the 3 bots take on one tank while I solo the other. I know that sounds like a show off, but I sometimes like to put my 1k hours to the test. And this is one way to do it. And if you're still alive after that boss rush, a rather unique rescue vehicle show up. And it's a seaplane. Extra points for creativity with this one. And there you have it. Although repetitive, this rural campaign still stands out by its atmosphere and unique visual elements, like the details in the catacombs, the enormous manor, and the little signs with the graffiti arrow on that give a little sense of motivation with that little text on the bottom. But I do enjoy Splash Mountain more, and some sections are more well done than Yama, so in between the two should make for a fine placement. And here are the first of many to come customs ranked based on my opinion. So far, every campaign has been somewhat decent to play and are quite enjoyable, except that one exception in the bottom. In the start of this series and the history of my channel, I played the more recognizable and well-known customs in the start, while going further into the future there will be way more obscure and even underrated campaigns rated, but we're not at that point yet. And as of writing this section, I realized how much work all of this is gonna be. But like many say, that's a problem for later. And hey, If you made it this far into the video, then you would surely have an opinion of your own. Do you agree or disagree with something I said in this video? Leave a comment, I reply most of the time. If you somehow liked what you saw, consider giving this video a like, and while you're at it, press that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next episode. This video took longer to make than it should have, so I hope the next upload won't take another 2 months to make. But until then, have a good one.